One of the really cool features about the Nord is the ability to use what they call slot A and slot B. And the buttons can be found down here at the bottom, just under the program buttons. But what this really allows you to do is to layer, if you like, a whole nother series of the organ, the piano, and the synth engines on top of each other. And it actually gives us a lot of other flexibility within the programming capabilities of the Nord. So the easiest way is probably to just think of it as a doubling capacity within one program. So what I have here is I'm using slot A, and you can tell because the red button is on. And in slot A, I have a piano and a synth on. And as you know, we can turn off the synth or turn it on and turn off the piano. So with these both on, that gives us one level of capability. But what if I wanted to double up on the piano? All right. Scrub that. Okay, so what I'm going to talk you through now is the use of slot A and slot B within the Nord. And this actually gives us a lot of other capabilities. If you remember earlier, one of the things I mentioned was when you change a program patch, it cuts the sound. And this can be quite distracting in different types of worship or a lot of the instrumentation where we don't always have a break where we can transition our patches or our sounds or programs. So the use of our slots actually is one of the nice things about this is it allows us to replicate a similar capability. So I'll just show you how that works. The easiest way to think about slots, though, as a concept is thinking of it as duplicating or adding in another layer of the organ, the piano, and the synth engines on top of each other. So what it allows me to do is to have two pianos and two synths enabled at the same time, or to be able to switch between them very easily. So here I've got slot A, which is active, and I have my piano and synth engines on. If I press slot B, I'll notice that actually that I don't have anything on here and I don't have anything on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on, and I've set it for an electric piano. So what I'm going to now do, so slot B has this piano engine on, and slot A has the piano and pad. So if I play the piano and pad, notice that this is on and this is off. You don't hear any electric piano. Now what I'm going to do is switch it over, and if you can hear, the patch is still lingering from the previous sound. And now if I play, I actually get my electric piano. So what happens if I switch back? I'll hold that, I switch and it's still lingering, but now I get my piano and pad sounds back on. So that's a great way to use slot A and slot B. So if I have an electric piano or a different synth sound, or if I just want a different synth sound, if I change that, I can actually go from my piano pad, switch it over, and then I'll get my synth sound. And then I can very easily switch back. Which is great. So that's all well and good, and that's a great way to use it to switch between sounds seamlessly. However, there's a little bit more than that as well. What you can actually do is use slot A and slot B at the same time. And what that means is you can effectively have two pianos and two synths, as well as the organs, playing all on one patch. I'll show you how to do that. The way you activate both slots is you hold one down and then you press the other one. And then what you'll notice is both lights are now lit, with the slot B flashing. So the active slot that you're looking at here is the slot B one. Now if I click back on slot A is the active, and if you remember, slot A was the piano and pad, and slot B we ended up changing to the synth, which I'll turn off, and I'll turn on the electric organ, electric piano. So in the previous example, if I'd only using slot B, I'd only hear the electric piano. But if I play it now, I'm actually hearing electric and normal piano and pad. And I'll turn it down so you can hear the actual piano. So this way I've now thickened up the sound and I've doubled it out. So if I add this synth on a slot B, I have now two synths and two keys, piano and electric piano, operating at the same time. So if I switch there, I've actually got a slightly richer sound because I've got two pads running, and the grand piano and an electric piano overlaid at the same time. So why would that be useful? Sometimes you need a thicker sound, which is great. The other way that I use it is to use an electric or a clav and then push it up an octave. So if I've got my slot B active, I actually use that octave shift button to push it up an octave. And what that adds is a little bit of sparkle and top end. And you can turn it down a bit, it doesn't need to be that high. And you can hear it in the background, it just adds a little bit more sparkle to it. So that's another way of how you can layer the sounds on top of each other. One other feature which is really useful about this slot A and slot B is sometimes you don't always know what sound, you may not have a sound programmed or ready to go. So if I come back to my I'll turn off slot B and I'll go back to slot A. Sorry, I should have explained. When I pressed them both and I had them both active, to turn it back to the slot A and slot B separately, you just press them down together again. So now I have my slot A active, and say what I will do is I'll turn this back on and I'll for my slot B, and I'll put it back to a grand. So I have a grand on slot A and a grand on slot B, which I'm now going to turn off. And I'll go back to slot A. So I'm back to my piano pad. Now say I realize that I actually want to switch to an electric piano, but I haven't actually got it set up. So how can I do that? Well, one way you can do it is to do it all on the fly. So if I'm holding the sound down, I can activate. So I've kept my sound going, but I've activated slot A and slot B. So now slot B is also active. And what I can do then is choose my pianos. Now, if I was to choose and I wanted an electric piano, if I turned it on, I would actually have my grand turned on. So what you can do is actually program it up before you even turn on, and set the volume before you even turn on the sound. So if I press this, I can naturally switch through to my electric keyboard sound and make sure that my volume is set to where I want it before I even turn it on. And now I can turn it on, and it's already set for what I actually want. So that's great, especially if you have a synth sound that you haven't yet set up and you need to set up. So that way we can now have our electric piano, and then if we turn it, press the buttons again and decouple the slot A and slot B, I've now gone to an electric piano without the sound breaking at all. So if I want it back on again, now I have everything. So if I switch to slot B, I can turn it off and switch it to a clav and then turn it on. So that's another way to use slot A and slot B.